Greetings, my name is Matt Simon and welcome to another episode of Hearing in Colour. Today I'm going to be talking about cruise ships again. This is part 2. This is the second cruise ship I worked on, and this whole podcast addresses 4 months contract that I worked on this ship. So not every episode is going to be just one ship per episode, but there was a lot that happened in this one and it was a bit mad. So let's get into it. I think I got the job through a Facebook post and a musicians group. There's an advert for bass player needed, so I responded, and I heard afterwards that the reason I got the job was because I didn't ask about the crew bar. The screening process that the band leader, the drummer, used was, he said, yep, this is the details, this is what we need, by the way, there's no crew bar. And most people who'd been on ships for a while said, like, oh, what, no crew bar? And that was a big red flag for him. He wasn't big on drinking and he didn't want everyone to get wrecked, so that's understandable. But I wasn't too bothered because on this ship we were allowed passenger status. So on the previous cruise ship, the Saga one, we were crew and it was very strict. You're very much a peasant down at the bottom. And this one, we're passengers. So that meant we get a slightly nicer cabin and we're allowed to walk around the deck and all the passenger areas in normal clothes, no uniform, and just enjoy the facilities a bit more. The general rule of thumb, as always, is if there is lots of passengers using the area, then don't take up table space, just move away. But if it's empty or you can find yourself a spare sunbed, then yeah, that's fine. Go for it. So I was really excited about that, so I wasn't too bothered about the crew bar. Turns out the crew bar on this ship was just grotty little hole, basically. It wasn't good. And we spent most of the time either drinking in the cabin or parties or on deck. We had a 50% discount, so that was enough to bring things down to about retail price for pints of beer. So yeah, not too bad. The setup on stage, there was bass, which was me, guitar, female vocals, and a drummer. And Evan did backing vocals, and the three of us on the front did. We all sang because we had to work every day, so it's quite demanding, just on your voice. So female singer did about 70-60% of it, the guitarist did about 20-30%, and I did around 10. So yeah, it just really helps spread that load because it's so much singing, and quite often a band will take the songs down so in a lower key, so it's not too difficult to sing repeatedly, and just having other people jump in and out helps a lot. The music was okay, nothing really special, and after you've cycled the 200 or 300 songs every day for weeks at a time and months, it just becomes quite boring. The previous bass player had been there for a year and a half, so they didn't really need to write set lists. Everyone knew the stuff backwards, so the drummer could just call it on the fly. This song, yep, go, and that was fine. I was a bit more new to the band, so the drummer, who was a band leader, he'd slip a set list under the cabin door during the afternoon. We just play off that. Obviously, we can switch things around a little bit if things are really going fast or really going slow in the evening, but yeah, we'd get our stuff. We didn't use iPads at that time, so we all had a ring binder folder which had those in plastic wallets, and then we'd take those in and out for the start of the gig and then line them all up. So this is a set list for today, and you can just flip through them. A lot of it we didn't really need, but just a safety net just to have it there, because even though you know the songs, so for example on guitar or bass, it's quite easy to remember the chords, especially if it's like 4 chords per song. But if you've got to remember a whole set of lyrics and you would have 300 of those off the top of your head, that's quite a lot to remember. So usually it's there just as a prompt, so you just glance over if you need it or if you forgot something. If it was a song that we didn't play very often, yeah, just have the information there just to know it. We weren't sitting there just reading it off the books, but again, it's just as a safety net, just to keep things flowing. This heavy routine, what it is good for is your stamina as a performer, because especially vocals, it's very tough, so your voice toughens up, and even playing a lot of guitar and bass, just playing a lot every day, it sort of really toughens up your fingers and your performance muscles. So coming off a ship and then doing 1 or 2 gigs at the weekend, it's just like it's nothing. So it makes it a lot easier to do the regular stuff. Although on a ship nobody drives to work, so you're doing 7 gigs a week, but it's a lot less taxing than doing 7 gigs on land, because you'd be driving there, setting your equipment up, and just pack down, drive home when you're tired. So it's not like that. And we were most of the time in the same room. There was a bar on the back of the ship in a small bar, so we had a stage there, and we were there most of the time, so it meant that we didn't need to sound check, and once the gear was set up we could just leave things there, come along and plug in. So we take our guitars off stage, but the amps and the stage setup in general would be there ready for us. So nice easy setup. It was a 4-month contract, and most of the cruises were 1 or 2 weeks. So that allows you to get to Norway, France, Spain, Italy and back. So most of it was Mediterranean, although we did do a 4-week one, and we went to Istanbul, which was great. So all the way down the Mediterranean, I got some really nice suits, a couple of which I got married in. And got to experience a lot of the Mediterranean and some of Norway, so and the Baltic as well. So it was a cool itinerary. And we also went to New England. That's quite a common one in the fall. New England in the fall, so autumn. So that generally goes to New York, Boston, a little bit of Canada, and we stopped over in Nova Scotia as well. So yeah, really cool itinerary. So I was really happy to go there, because the previous ship we'd gone to Africa and a bit of the Mediterranean, but this expanded my horizons a little bit more. And because Fred Olsen is a Norwegian, or part Norwegian owned company, and generally smaller ships than some of the average ones out there, where the ship was allowed to go into some of the smaller fjords that most other ships aren't allowed to go to. So we got to see some really cool scenery, and some really cool stuff, one of which was the Kiel Canal. That was quite interesting. So if you look at a map of Europe, Denmark basically sticks out over the top of Germany, and what has happened is they dug a canal basically just through the top of Germany, so you can go from the North Sea to the Baltic Sea, crossing through without having to sail all the way around Denmark. And this will save you, according to Wikipedia, 250 nautical miles or 460 kilometres, and you can save a lot of time. This was quite surreal, because we're on a cruise ship and it's a smallish one, but still a cruise ship being in a canal. So I was in the gym, which is often at the top of the ship at the front, and so you get a nice view looking out the front, just working out. And the cruise ship, you see just miles and miles of sea, or you might see the port when you docked, but going through a canal was alarmingly pedestrian. So there was one morning I was in the gym, and just there was a guy cycling with his dog just right next to the ship, which you'd never see, and people waiting to go over little car bridges, and very odd experience. I'll come back to Kiel Canal in a moment. The captain's announcements were quite an experience. I can't remember his name. Wouldn't want to dox him anyway. But the captain was an East European gentleman, with a voice very monotone, like nice guy, but not really cut out public speaking. And what they'll often do on a cruise ship is they'll ring the bell at noon and say, "Hello, yes, we are. This is our position. This is what you can see out the windows, or this is how things are going. This is the weather." Just like a quick update to keep in touch. And this guy tried to spice it up a little bit. So he'd have this, like, believe it or not, crazy facts, but it was delivered in a monotone. So, believe it or not, the cheese grater was invented in Norway. Just, he was trying this is a fun fact, but it just wasn't. I looked that one up, and the cheese grater was invented in France, but as a cheese slicer that was invented in Norway. We spoke to one of the cadets, and he said the captain was always asking him for facts, and he said, "I don't know what to do. I'll either Google something or just make it up," and he says it. And we were talking to one of the contractors on board, and he said, yeah, this story, I got the captain really bad one time, because I was speaking to my friends, "Oh, would you like me to get the captain to say something really, really stupid?" And they're like, yeah, go for it. And they knew this guy liked the fact of the day. So previous time when they're in the Kiel Canal, said, "Oh, captain, I've got another fact of the day for you." "Oh, excellent." And he said, "We're just about to pass the longest bench in Europe." "Oh, excellent. I'll make an announcement." So, bing bong, "This is your captain speaking. Believe it or not, if you look out to the left, the port, you will see the longest bench in Europe." "How long is it?" "I don't know, 150 meters. "It's 150 meters. I'd have loved to have been there in the cafeteria, and people just half would have ignored him, and the half and what? That's classic. Pranking the captain, that takes some balls. I don't have those balls. I got to see some really cool places. So went around, you often stop around Lisbon, usually on the way in or out of the Mediterranean. It'll be your first or last stop. Barcelona, some places in Spain, that's Barcelona, Italy I mean. And Norway was really interesting. It's very expensive for beer. It was years before I actually bought a beer in a bar. I found some in supermarkets because I always wanted to try different beers. We did quite a lot of drinking. Some driving, but not combined, although it did end quite badly. We went quad biking in Santorini, and that was awesome until it went wrong, because we were driving around and it was really cool. We'd stop for a drink somewhere, had a coffee and a soft drink, and then it the other member of the band was on the back while I was driving this bit, and something happened with the bike, and it almost slammed us into this wall. It was a choice of either going like off a cliff, turning into the wall and like taking out our kneecaps basically, or heading straight into the wall. So split second decision, like, more intuition than anything else. I just drove straight at the wall. It was about waist height, and then it flipped us over the bike, and we were basically unharmed apart from a few scratches and bruises. Took it back to the place, and part of the chassis underneath was really damaged, and there's no getting around that, so we had to stump up for that. And because I was driving, I had to pay for all of that, and that cost me a month's wages. Just that hurt. I didn't have the money in my account, so the band leader had to come down to the shop, and he had an emergency credit card with him. So I guess this kind of shit's happened before. Oh, immediately at sea for about 30 years. So yeah, I didn't get paid that month. That hurt because just working for free, but it was fun until that time. The guitarist I was showing a cam with didn't speak to me for a couple of days after that. It was pretty bad, but yeah, then you get on with things. But it was relief to get back on the ship after that. I got some suits in Istanbul. I got 3, and I'm still wearing some of them. They just about fit me still. They're only about £100 each, and this was 2014. I got really nice blue, like navy blue suit, and tried it on, and so thinking, yep, great, I'll need this, because we generally wore suits on stage, and then it was nice to have a couple of nice ones as well. And then they had a cream version of it. I just looked at it, and as soon as I tried it on, I was like, that's mine, and I got married in that suit. That's really cool. And I picked up a red suit at a different shop. The guy's really happy that I bought some stuff from him. He gave me loads of free waistcoats and some ties and bits and bobs, but yeah, really nice quality stuff. So that was by the Grand Bazaar. Highly recommended to go there. Very nice place. Our guitarist, he'd always in a coffee shop say his name was Dave, just because it was easier. I don't know why his name was John. I don't know why that was too difficult, but he just always would say Dave. So we're in Turkey, and he'd ordered a coffee and it came as Dave. It was spelled Dayif, which is, yeah, that's close enough. Had some really good pizza there. Italy, God, yeah, I love pizza. I was trying to save money generally when I was on ships, so I'd go out and have a few drinks, but wouldn't really eat, because some of the crew food can be pretty bad, but we were allowed passenger status, and on other cruise ships I had sort of intermediate level, so we were allowed to eat much better food. Whereas I understand for some of the crew who are just eating really bad food, they just want to eat something nice when they got off the ship. So I wouldn't normally do that, but if we went to Greece or Italy, I'd always have something that's really good, like proper pizza with some local red wine. And I don't drink coffee, but I'll have an espresso, and there's some gelato afterwards. It's just awesome. We drank a lot on the ship as well. They had a system called the slop chest. You could order it through your cabin steward. So the cabin steward would normally tip them when they changed the beds and things, or they just changed the beds and the towels in the bathroom. On one ship it was $1 a day, or another guy would give them like $20 or £30 a month or something. But yeah, so you could order these drinks. You could order some wine and some spirits, or just crate of beer, and then leave the money with them, or leave it as you went out, and then the money would go, the form would go, then they'd come back, and there'd just be a crate of beer and some other bits next to your bed. So that was really cool. So always had at least a crate of beer under the bed. Always good to have something to go to. We had a fridge as well, because we were passengers, so we were allowed a fridge in our cabin, which was nice. So there's always cold beer available, which was good. And the drinking, yeah, you get quite bored because you're working every night. I know you're not labouring on a building site, but it gets quite repetitive, and you don't see your friends and family for months, although you do make close friendships with some of the people on board, or there's a few arseholes as well. But it's just what it is. But then when the parties come out, like, people party hard because you've got to let off that steam. We weren't officially allowed in the crew area because we were passengers, and the security were quite hot on making sure that, well, you get these privileges, you don't get to come here. So we'd have to sneak down to the cabin. And the show team, they were awesome. So often on a cruise ship you'll have a production team, so there'll be a team of singers and dancers, and they'll have maybe 10 shows they cycle through. They do one every few days in the main theatre, and they're generally like a younger crowds. They're up for a party and up for some fun, and these guys are pretty crazy. And I know you probably hear like, oh, it's pretty crazy, but our drummer, who'd been at sea for almost 30 years, he said, yeah, like, these guys, these are the worst I've seen. Like, they're mad. We had some great parties. They did one, and it was a fancy dress theme, and so they had a lot of time off because they weren't working every day. They had to do some other duties around the ship, but they had a bit more time off than us for a lot of the evenings. And they're like, yeah, we'll tell you what the costume is. It's a costume party. It's like, well, you need to let us know, because otherwise what we're going to do? Like, no, we'll sort you out, but like, you'll know on the day. So in between sets on that evening, we'd come back to the cabin, and there was a bin liner each on our beds. I'm like, what's this? We got to use this to make a costume. We've got a bin liner. So for us, like, it was bad. I mean, 2 straight guys given a bin liner. We're like, what are you going to do? So our singer made herself into the Statue of Liberty, and there's a picture of that on my website, mattsimonguitar.com. And we just didn't know what to do, so we made like a little sack dress of it, and the other guy accessorized with a belt, so he was not technically the worst. I got the prize for the worst costume on that one. They did another one, and I think it was Disney theme. I went as Aladdin, the genie, so I shaved my chest, which was weird. I've got a slightly hairy chest, and so looking down it just looked like someone else's chest for the next 2 months. And then basically got blued up, and I couldn't do my back, so like one of the other guys came up and like blued me up, so that was pretty cool. Although I did get some face paint, it was used all over me, like face paint on their cabin, that to be cleared up, and it's a bit odd buying it, because there's a shop in Southampton, a party supply store, so when they're like, right, I need some blue face paint, I need it like just for my torso, I'm going to be Aladdin's genie. And so the woman said, well, yeah, this face paint, it has like 9 or 18 faces worth. I said, well, I'm not painting my face, like, is this going to cover my body? Like, well, how much surface area is your body in faces? I'm like, I don't know, that's a strange question to ask someone. But yeah, got through it, and that was quite cool. And that party was nuts. We were hammered, and they'd ordered some food down, and our guitarist was he was trying it on with one of the singers, one of the girls, and he was at some point, because some of the singers are female, a couple of the men, you get some like gay dancers in there, so they're up for some mad shit, and they were like, get it out, John, get it out. And he's like, no, I'm a grower, not a shower, because he didn't want to get his little guy out. But then later on he did. So I mean, these cabins are small. If you imagine like a prison cell you've seen on TV, it's basically about that size, like a couple of bunk beds, tiny bit of space, and a bathroom stuck on the side. So he'd been in the bathroom for a little while, kind of like getting his little guy ready, and then he jumped out and announced it. It was like, "Rah!" Like, he didn't want to waste time having it go down, so he jumped out, waved it around, and I was like, oh my god, what are you doing? And as he did that, he tripped over the door and landed on his shoulder, and didn't dislocate it, but he injured it quite badly. And he couldn't lift his arm more than 30 degrees up, so he couldn't have his arm horizontal, which was a bit awkward, putting on his guitar and moving things around. And our drummer said, what's he done to his arm? Like, he injured it getting his dick out. He tried to get his dick out, but he got it wrong. Yeah, that took a few days to heal, which is quite funny. They sometimes they do party games and things. There's one, they just call stuff out. And so yeah, the guitarist, the dare was, that girl, because they knew he liked her, like, just the cock slap her in the face. And again, I'm a grower, not a shower, so he's just really awkwardly, she did it, just got it out, and just very awkwardly slapped her on the cheek with it. Fun times. Yeah, I know that's not very woke, but it's like, well, it was a party. Like, no one was traumatised from it. I had a dare. They said, oh yeah, Matt, you and her, swap clothes. And that was my once-in-a-lifetime chance to see a naked, quite attractive young lady, but I didn't. I was like, oh, okay. I was wearing shorts and a t-shirt, and she was wearing a onesie and some underwear. And so she ripped off the onesie. It came off like a sock. It's kind of folded in, so she threw that at me, and it took me a little while to get it on. I was just concerned with getting my hairy balls in there, and then swap clothes. Just, yeah, get naked in front of your friends. It was, but this was 2014, so like no one was filming it. There was nothing on social media, which, I'm glad about that, considering some of those parties. And that girl, who shall not be named, had a special talent. She could queef on command, which is a lady fart from the front area. That was on command. That was quite funny. She'd lie on her back on the floor, and then looked like she was like trying to get a burp coming, but then she somehow would be able to manipulate the air, and that was quite a party trick. And they it got taken up a level because another party, they had those electric abs belts where you strap it to your stomach and then it passes electrical current through, and which tenses up the muscles, which effectively gets your muscles to move without you having to really do it. And obviously these guys turn it up to the full whack, so it was 35 was the setting where you just normally have a good workout, and then they're like, right, let's crank it to 140. And yeah, everyone had to go through the rite of passage of doing the belt. So it wasn't too bad for me because my core was quite toned anyway. I'd like to work out a lot, so it just felt like all your muscles are really tense and then stop, and periodically you just, it's fine, there we go again. But our guitarist had it and he wasn't as toned, and that was hilarious. It came on every few seconds, but he was trying to talk while he was being electrocuted. So, yes, oh fucking hell, let's go. Oh fuck me, this hurts. Yeah, how Johnny? Oh fuck. So obviously the logical extreme for this was for someone to try fanny farts whilst being electrocuted. So that was something to see. So she's lying on the ground doing a swallowing, breathing thing, and then getting electrocuted every 5 seconds or something, and that's a memory that will stay, just lying on the ground. And funny, one of the girls had a boyfriend who was a doctor who was hanging out with us, and he was watching this, just like obviously completely different social circles that he'd normally associate with, but just watching all this go on, like, what the fuck is this going on? It was nice guy, but he was definitely a little bit confused. But for us, that was like, well, this is kind of normal. But the partying did not stop there. Sometimes it was taken outside, on shore. So normally when a cruise ship pulls up, it will dock around 6 or 7 in the morning. You can get off around 7:30, 8, and then people come back around 4 or 5 p.m. and then ship sails away. But sometimes you get lucky and you get what's called an overnight. So if it's a big stop, usually somewhere like New York or like a big world city like that, the ship will stop there overnight. So it will leave late afternoon on the second day. So this means that some of the passengers might want to get off and take a hotel somewhere or stay out really late. And it means for the crew, they can get off and have an actual night out. And imagine you're a group of young people cooped up and everyone's working every day. You're all a bit stressed or bored or want to let off some steam. And then once every 2 months or more, you get a night out. So it doesn't matter where that is, like shit's going down. We did a Baltic cruise and there was about 3 overnights in 2 weeks. Oh, it was nuts. Sweden was one. Helsinki was the worst. It was crazy. There was just went out. And again, just think like, this is the only night out we're going to have for months and months, and it's in a cool new city we've never been. The show team really went all out on that one. They were in a club. There's like something at McDonald's. They ended up in a limo somewhere. Even the cruise director and the assistant cruise director, they were somehow managed to get themselves both off duty that night. And there was. Nowadays, like, you just get fired because of the state we came back in. We'd like, our singer gave a piggyback to a guitarist who's much bigger than her, and then she fell over, cut her face open, so she just walked up to the gangway, the security, like drunk with grit and blood in her face. There's one of the girls got lost and then knocked on a police car thinking it was a taxi, and they dropped her off the ship quite helpfully, so she basically just pulled up to the ship and a police car came out crying, walks up, and security at that time, they were like, yeah, well, I guess they're back on safely there, that's fine, but you'd get sacked on the spot for that now. The best one was in Halifax in Canada. We had an overnight there, and everything just went nuts. There was a big group of us went to a bar, and generally the entertainment department's there, very musical, and there was a couple of guys on stage doing some acoustic stuff, and eventually some of our lot got up and then said, we're going to another bar, like loads of musicians go there, do you want to come? We're like, yeah, it's fine. So there's a group of like 20 of us went in there, and then there's another guy playing guitar who took requests, so people got up and played, and there's a clip of it somewhere, like someone is singing and then the dancers were doing this routine in front, like marching around. And then people got invited to house parties, and that's a risk. Like, because if you've got to be back on board or duties the next day, you can't be waking up in the strange part of some town you don't know. So yeah, some girl went home with a guy, passed out, and said, it's fine, I checked my hoo-ha in the morning, hadn't been interfered with. I got chatting to a couple of girls and was offered a threesome, and then they decided against it. And I'd been walking with them for like 10-15 minutes. Like, I've got no idea where I am now. But fortunately, I looked over like, oh, there's the ship. Yeah, just stuff like that. It's hard to describe, but like, yeah, if you can imagine like a birthday party and a stag do, like just all in one. But yeah, in a completely new city, it was nuts. We had an overnight in Istanbul. That was pretty crazy. Just the taxi getting us into town was like a Top Gear episode. These crazy thin streets, like going up hills, and then yeah, just brilliant. Really recommend that. Although I can't really recommend it anymore because you can't do that now. I mean, there's stories of people like being brought back in a wheelchair because they couldn't walk, they drank so much, and they're trying to convince security. They're like, oh, he's had a bad turn, and somehow getting that passed. But yeah, you could not do that now. After that contract, the band was due for a month break, and then we're going to go back on and go to the Caribbean. That didn't work out because some of the bands got the job, and I was crushed about that because it was going to be a world cruise after that. But I eventually got to go to the Caribbean and world cruise on P&O later, so that was fine. Got to see some cool things, like the midnight sun is quite strange. In Norway, if you go to the Arctic Circle, the sun just doesn't dip below the horizon. And it was strange because we'd finish our last set I know we start the set at 11:30 p.m, so we're walking outside on the side of the ship to get to the bar at the back of the ship, and just the sun is out, which is really weird. Although people will show you pictures of it. Look, it's a midnight sun. Like, well, it could be any time, like, but it is. Tried many different beers around the world, which was cool. So on that cruise, it was Europe. Two weirdest ones going to attribute to Finland. That was in Helsinki. One was bacon flavoured, which had actually some bacon in it. And it just didn't work. I mean, you can have beer and bacon, that's great, but combine the two into one product, it's nasty. The other one, which is impressive, in Finland they actually add tar into some of the food, so some of the licorice and the sauces. And because I said to the guy, like, I like really dark beer, like really dark stuff, what have you got? And so he explained that. I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, give me the dark one. And it just had a heaviness to it that I've not had before or since, even with much stronger beers, but just a heaviness, like, oh, it's got tar in it. So yeah, that's pretty cool, and I wouldn't have been able to try that had I not been playing bass on a cruise ship, so very grateful. There's generally a pretty good team on board. The cruise director was very good and looked out for us. Quite often there's lots of complaints come in. People, if they've been on the cruise ships for a long time or they feel a bit more entitled, they complain about the smallest thing. And there was, this guy really looked out for us. Sometimes when complaints would come in, he'd say, yeah, occasionally I'll look at it on its way to the bin. So it's nice that he knew that a lot of these complaints would just be meaningless. Or he'd say, yeah, right, I'll follow that up, and wouldn't come back to us, which is nice. Salacious details, I won't go into too much. Tried it on with one of the cabin girls. That didn't end up working out, and then I accidentally pulled one of the other girls on board. On the night, so her cabin mate was asleep, so we couldn't go there. My cabin mate was asleep, couldn't go there. So the only place left really we found was the arts and crafts room, and the location was a ping pong table. Good times. The cabins can be quite cramped, and often you're in bunk beds as crew, so unless they've got passenger status or an actual bed, then yeah, well, we end up having more space than you normally would. So yeah. What's some other highlights or lowlights? So when we were playing as a band, we didn't play solidly through the evening. There'd be a background CD on, and one time we'd finished our first early evening set, and someone had fallen asleep. Great, thanks for that. And then she woke up after we'd finished playing, so we're in a break, and the CD's playing, and she just woke up. Oh, very good, very good. What, you just clapped the CD? Wow, like, why are we here? If that's the level of audience engagement. It was a cool time, and after that I went off to Australia for 3 months, which was really cool. It was cool. I don't miss it because I did what I need to do, and tick those boxes. So thanks for listening, and do check out my app Guitar Secrets, which is available in the Apple and Google Store, and I'll see you on the next one. Cheers.